Where Hollywood Hides. Here's Bob and Suzanne.
Chicken joke! I'm Mrs. Cleaver.
From Television City in Hollywood.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller plays.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Nanu.
Baby, you're the great.
Here comes the judge.
More cowbell.
Not special.
There's anything wrong with that.
And now for something completely different.
There's no business like show business, like no business I know.
Welcome to Where Hollywood Hides. This is podcast episode number 23. My name is Bob McCullough.
And my name is Suzanne Herrera McCullough.
Wow, I like the pause you take.
I thought I would change it up a little bit.
It makes it sound so much more, I don't know, there's an elegance to it with the pause.
If you say so.
Where Hollywood Hides, this podcast, is now heard around the world. So I just want to take a minute to say a quick thank you to all the folks in Ireland, Spain, Italy, Germany, France, Mexico, South Africa, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, the United Kingdom, and China. It's great to hear from people all over the globe, and we hope you'll all visit our website at wherehollywoodhides.com because all of you out there have helped us get some great new sponsors on board, and we want to share them with you.
So I was thinking, Bob, every woman loves flowers, right?
That's what I've been told.
And it's been months.
I hadn't noticed, but...
My personal favorite this week, Bob, is 1-800-Flowers.com, one of the internet's original online retailers, and has been named one of the web's top 50 retail stores for 7 years now. That's a long time.
That's saying something because the internet's pretty big.
So, Bob, this is the only place to order flowers online. So whether you're looking for roses, orchids, gift baskets, or wedding bouquets, that's not us, is it? No. 1-800-Flowers.com has the absolute best in quality and service. And the best way to get that service and that absolute best prices, whether you're looking for delivery across town or even here to Santa Barbara, Bob.
Okay, I'm getting a hint.
Is by going to wherehollywoodhides.com and clicking on the 1-800-Flowers link. So flowers are always the perfect gift from 1-800-Flowers.com.
All right. Today's podcast features a friend of mine I've known for a long time, one of television's probably most highly regarded directors. He has more credits than most people amass in 5 lifetimes. He has directed shows like Magruder and Loud, Chiefs, Hotel. He did series like The Rockford Files, Hawaii Five-0, Del Vecchio, Policewoman, The Bionic Woman, Petrocelli, Harry-O, $6 Million Man, Kojak, Switch, and Beretta. He's also worked with major stars around the world. He's worked with Bob Newhart, Robert Blake, Burt Reynolds, Doris Day, Angie Dickenson, Rock Hudson, Lee Remick, James Garner, Glenn Ford, Eddie Albert. The list is pretty long. I'll cut it short. Gregory Peck, Christopher Plummer, and Sir John Gielgud. He's worked for producers like Glenn Larson, Edward Feldman, Stephen J. Cannell, and Aaron Spelling. He's worked at every major studio, MGM, Fox, Paramount, Warner Brothers, Universal. I'm running out of breath. His resume is amazing.
Yes, and his career exploded in the 1980s, and one of the biggest miniseries that he ever did was Shogun. Probably the longest miniseries of its kind, 12 hours.
Yeah, and it was all shot in Japan, too.
Do you remember how much that changed everything? Sushi became the thing to eat.
Right.
I often wondered what Shogun meant, and I looked it up, and it means commander and chief.
Oh.
And it ended in 1867, but before then it was a hereditary position. They were the ruler and the commander.
Cool.
So that's why they named it Shogun.
All right.
So can't wait for the audience to hear Jerry London because he has some fabulous stories.
And here we go. I think the way to start is at the beginning. So my question for you, Jerry, is how did you actually get into the business and what motivated you to even think about it?
Well, when I was a kid, I loved art. So I did a lot of painting. I was a good cartoonist, and I took art in school, and I was really happy with it, and I felt that's what I wanted to do.
Now, was art, did it run in your family, your mother or father? No,
not at all.
Wow.
My father was a banker, and all his brothers He had 3 brothers and his sisters, all worked in the studios. So from the time I was, as I remember, 5 or 6 years old, I was always hearing about movies, movie stars, et cetera, et cetera. And then the studios were shooting on Saturdays, and on Saturday, about every couple of months, I'd go on the studio lots, and my uncles would walk me around the lots and show me what they did.
That must have been exciting.
Really exciting. And he was the manager of RKO Pathé, which is the old Selznick Studios in Culver City. And that's where they shot, the part of Gone with the Wind, et cetera, a lot of King Kong, a lot of the old movies. And so I was always fascinated by the movie business, but I felt if I got into it, I'd be an art director. That was what propelled me. So when I graduated high school, I had actually had a couple of scholarships to go to some pretty good schools, but I really wanted to get in the movie business. So I told my uncle, I'd rather go work in a studio. And he said, well, okay, I know you want to be an art director. Let me see what I can do.
So we're talking about true nepotism here.
Well, that's the business.
Of course.
If you're going to get in, you got to know somebody. Yeah, let's face it.
Yeah, there's no other way, is there?
I always tell the kids that I'm talking to, say, how do you get in the business? You got to know somebody. Pure talent is good because you need that, but to break through, you've got to have a connection. So anyways, he went to his connections in the art, and he knew a lot of people, and they said, well, I can't help you because he's not a relative. If you weren't a relative, son or daughter of an art director, you couldn't get in the union. It was a complete shutout.
And they were open about that.
Yeah, they just told you.
Wow.
They said, no, we can't. We don't take anybody. And at that time, television was just starting to blossom, et cetera. And anyways, he said, yeah, I don't know what to do, but he said, what about film editing? And I said, well, what is it exactly? He says, come on over here. We'll go into a cutting room. Took me over to a cutting room, and I see these guys on the moviolas doing the film and running it. And I said, well, that's kind of interesting. I really wanted to, be in the movie business, so I said, well, I'll try it. So for about 6 weeks, I apprenticed in the cutting room, learning the basics of how to splice film, because in those days you actually cut it and glued it, in code film. And after about 6 weeks, the guys who were in there said, yeah, he's ready. My uncle called the head of post-production, who he knew very well at Desi Productions. And he said, my grandson wants to get in over there. Can you help him out? And he said, yeah, have him come over here. So I went over. So
is this Desi Lou when?
Yeah, Desi Lou when they were making I Love Lucy.
Right. When Star Trek was over there,
well, Star Trek was at Paramount, but this was at Motion Picture Center Studios.
Oh, okay.
Cahuenga and Willoughby.
Okay.
And so I went over there and I started upstairs in this old rickety building, and I was the apprentice film editor on I Love Lucy. And
my favorite show.
Well, there you are, everybody's.
Right.
That's right.
No, seriously, we have the whole collection.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Anyway, I met the editor, and that day I went in. It was 100 degrees, right? It was really a hot day.
Oh, you remember that?
Yeah, I walk in the first day, and the guy is cutting in his underwear. I said, geez, what kind of a business is it? And he's sitting there really in his underwear.
That's
cutting
great.
The film. Yeah. So anyway, I worked as an apprentice film editor for about a year, and then I got moved up to the assistant film editor, which really means you're more hands-on, because the assistant on I Love Lucy, he got moved up. They were moving people up all the time. At that time, Desi Lou had 9 shows. It was a real giant. They had Wyatt Earp and December Bride and all these shows. So this was kind of exciting because every weekend we took the film, the show that was shot the week before and edited to Desi and Lucy's house. And they had 3 houses. They had one in Beverly Hills, one in Del Mar, one in Palm Springs. So every Saturday we'd head out in the car with the reels of film, and we'd go to the house. And Desi had this, the big-headed moviola. You could run three reels at a time or one or whatever. And we'd go in the garage or whatever room he set up, and we'd run the picture.
So did they have that moviola screening set up at all three houses?
They did. They did.
So you spent some time on Roxbury Drive.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Little Desi and Lucy.
So Jerry, I have to ask you,
Yeah.
what was Desi like? Was he as nice as he seemed?
He was the greatest, I got to tell you. The greatest guy, cared about people, funny, a real decent human being. Lucy was quite aloof. We never had much contact with Lucy. It was all Desi.
So he was really running things.
Yeah, he was running things. Guy is a genius and such a nice man, One of my favorite stories is one Saturday we were in Delmar, and of course he went down there for the racing season. He's a big horse guy. And we're in the garage cutting, and in comes a little guy and says, "Hey, Desi," and Desi says, "Hold it up. This is Johnny Longden." Johnny says to Desi, "Well, today's the day, Des. We're going to bring him in today." And he's telling Desi he's going to make his horse win. He's going to ride him in. So Desi says, "We got to finish up early, boys. We're going to the track." And so I'd never been to a racetrack,
What a fun day.
I was like 18 years old, So we go into the clubhouse where all these fancy box seats are, and the women with the hats and everything. We were there having lunch, and then finally, I think it was the sixth race, and I put $5 on the nose. That's a lot of money at that time, right?
Right.
And the race goes off. They're screaming and yelling and everything, and Desi's horse wins, and hallelujah! It was just wild. And then the inquiry sign goes up because evidently the jockey bumped somebody and the sign goes up. And now Desi stands up and he starts screaming all these obscenities in front of all these people.
Was it in English or Spanish?
Oh, it was in English, boy. And I'll tell you, he said every word and all the F-bombs you can think of. And I'm sitting there hiding my head because I'm embarrassed for him. I mean, your mother, and he's screaming and yelling. A couple of minutes later, the answer comes down, and they declare Desi's horse the winner anyway. So it was a big success. Now, one of the things I forgot to tell you, in the car going to the track and with us was Fernando Lamas. That was Desi's buddy. And so as we're driving home, Fernando says to Desi, he says, "Hey, turn on the radio. I want to hear the last race." And Desi said, what do you mean? You got something going you didn't tell me? And Fernando says, "Well, there's some long shot. Yeah, he'll never come in, Anyway, listen to the race, and this friggin' horse comes in and paid 50 to 1.
Wow.
And you should have heard Desi tell Fernando off. It was one of the funniest days I ever spent in my life.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Great stuff.
So you're an assistant editor working at Desi Lou,
Right.
and working weekends.
Absolutely.
So even with the union, they just work you guys whenever.
Well, they pay you. They pay you.
Yeah.
So I was working on after Lucy, I did some various other shows. I worked on The Untouchables, and I worked on the Danny Thomas Show, and they move you around. And I was there for about 8 years because the union doesn't let you move up to being an editor until you've been in for 8 years. But within the last couple of years that I was working my way up there, I started editing because I'd keep asking my editor, "Why don't you let me cut this scene? Let me try," because I'd been around long enough that I saw what they did. And I really had a couple of years' experience doing scenes. That's how I learned to do it, because these guys were good enough to let you play with it. And, if you made a mistake, they could fix it.
But in those days, the mistake meant they had to reprint the dailies, didn't they?
No, they didn't reprint it. You just patch it back. You patch the
Wow, that's a lot of tape.
Yeah, a lot of tape. But that's what The Apprentice was doing.
Right.
They tear the tape off and put the clip on, and that was all the work. Luckily, I had a pretty good feel for it. And after my 8 years went up, they gave me a show to do. And the first show I did was a comedy called Glynis with Glynis Johns. It only lasted for one season, but I met some nice people. And one of the guys I met there was the producer. His name was Ed Feldman. He came from the advertising agency. He was from New York, a very nice man, and we had a great relationship. And I moved on. I went over to Fox, and I started editing the Daniel Boone Show. And while I was over there, Ed Feldman called me, and he said, "Jerry, I'm doing a new pilot, and I want you to come over and edit it." And I said, "Well, but I'm over here at Fox working." He says, No, he says, I got big plans for you. I want you with me. Come on over with me. And
That must have been exciting to hear.
well, yeah, and I liked the guy a lot, so I figured, well, all right, I'll leave them, and took a shot,
Sure.
Anyway, this was the pilot for Hogan's Heroes.
Big show.
So that's how we start. Actually, I started really working and growing because besides being the editor for the first, I think it was the first 6 or 7 shows, he then moved me up to associate producer, and I moved my assistant editor up to fill my shoes as the editor. And just a side note, my assistant editor was Michael Kahn, who's now Spielberg's right-hand
That's right.
editor.
That's right.
Michael Kahn.
He does all Spielberg stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Michael said to me, no, I can't cut. I don't know anything about it. I said, I'll teach you. So I'm the guy that taught Mike how to cut.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, as an associate producer working for Ed, he was the kind of guy that let you do a lot. You didn't have just a title. I'd go to casting meetings. I'd go to script readings, and he let me hire the secondary cast and check the props and wardrobe. And I was doing a lot.
So this was like your film school, really.
Absolutely.
I mean,
besides that, when the directors didn't finish a scene or I needed a pickup shot, he sent me down to the stage to do it. He said, go down there, talk to the cameraman, and get what you need to fill
nice opportunities,
yeah.
huh? Yeah.
So now that was my kind of first thing, working with the actors and the stage work, and I did that for a couple of years, and then now Ed decided he wanted to be a director, and he said, Jerry, when I'm directing, I want you on the set with me because I want to be sure I shoot all the shots I need. And I said, well, fine, I'll be there.
Had he been directing?
No. This was his first shot at it.
So this sounds like you were going to be teaching him.
Well, I was his crutch. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew how to deal with actors and stuff, and he knew scripts great.
But in terms of directing, just for listeners who aren't really familiar with what it's like to put a movie together, an editor with your experience at this point, you know what coverages you require.
Right.
You know which direction actors have to be looking relative to the lens.
Exactly.
And how things will or will not cut together. So a guy who comes on, first-time director, but he's got great ideas, he still may not know what the heck he's doing.
Yeah, because technically that was his weak point. He had the cameraman that would help him with the lenses and the dolly moves and stuff, but he wasn't quite sure how to piece it together, and that's why I was there. But he was a quick learner, and he did fine. And every once in a while, I go up to him and say, Ed, you're really shooting in the wrong direction. You're shooting into a wall. Turn around and get the feeling of the set. And he started listening to me. And then at the end of the 4th season, he said, Jerry, I think you should be a director. And I had never even thought about it. I was just doing my job. I love working on the show. And he said, yeah, I think you should do it. I said, Ed, I don't know if I'm ready. I don't know how. He said, well, when you're ready, let me know.
What were you afraid of?
Failing.
Okay.
Failing. One of the first most important things I still tell my students, don't direct unless you're confident. That's one of the keys. You have to be confident. So I started thinking about it, and I said, what do I need to, because I knew the camera, because, I shot 35 millimeter still stuff. It's the same lenses as a movie camera. I knew the lenses. I knew the editing. My weak point was dealing with the actors. So I decided to go at night and take some courses, and I took a drama course over at UCLA.
What a good idea.
And then I took a psychology course.
That's a really good idea.
Well, that's the key. Psychology course over at Santa Monica College. So for 2 years, basically, I started earlier in this because Ed told me this early on. He said, you might want to be a director. But at the end of the 4th season, I had gone to school. I took the psychology. I studied drama, and I also joined an actors workshop called Theater East, and I started directing scenes from plays, Tennessee Williams, and I did a lot of comedy stuff, the Star Spangled Girl and stuff like that, and I really learned how to talk to actors because I had nothing to lose. When you're working on, that kind of stuff, you just do what you want. It's an experiment.
Right, and there isn't some big studio spending money looking
right.
at everything
and
you do.
So your communication skills that's how you learn them. And anyways, he kept saying, when do you want to do it? And then finally, I knew that I could talk to actors, and I finally said to him, okay, I want to direct. And I was confident. I knew I could do it. So I did the last show of the fourth season. I went out there, and of course I knew all the actors because I started with them, so they were great to me. And I didn't really have to, teach them acting. They knew their parts. But, when I was saying, maybe it's better if you did this or maybe you did too much, I could get what I wanted out of them. Anyway, the show worked great. I got it down. I finished on time. It was good. So the last couple of seasons, I kept directing. I directed about 9 or 10 more shows.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah, well, at that time they were doing 32 shows a year, a season. So they did a lot of shows.
So now you're in the Directors Guild and the Editors Guild? So
finally the show wrapped. I had, this credit. Well, having one credit, that doesn't really help you a lot, again, unless you know somebody. So I started cutting commercials because Ed knew some people in the advertising agency. I started directing commercials. I forgot how long I did it, maybe 6 months or so. And then Ed got another show. He started producing the Doris Day show. And he called me up and he said, look, we're going to work on the Doris Day show. And I went with him. I directed a couple of shows for her. And while I was there, I met a great production producer, a legend in the business called Abby Singer.
Sure.
Everybody knows Abby Singer. He just passed away recently.
He just recently passed away, yeah.
Just recently. He was famous for the next to the last shot. He'd come on the set and he says, all right, boys, let's wrap it up. And when Abby walked on the set, it was the next to the last shot, and that was entitled The Abby Singer. So he's very famous in the business. Anybody, if you ask what an Abby Singer is, they know.
Right.
Anyways, Abby was very helpful. He liked me, and he said, you should be directing other shows. And I said, well, I really don't know anybody. And he said, I'll help you out.
Did you have an agent at that time?
Yeah, I had an agent, but, it's the old story, unless you really know somebody,
Mm-hmm.
So he got me over to Columbia, and I directed The Partridge Family and a couple other shows over there. And he also got me into Paramount, where I did Happy Days and Love American Style.
Those were pretty big shows.
And I started building some credits. That's how I had a few credits here, a few credits there, and I started getting known as a comedy director. I got a call. Abby knew some people over at that time. It wasn't called the Mary Tyler Moore Company or whatever it was, and they were doing the Bob Newhart show.
Mm-hmm.
They interviewed me and they said, do you know Three Camera? They didn't say, have you directed Three Camera? He said, do you know Three Camera? And I told them the truth. I knew Three Camera because Lucy was a three-camera show.
Sure.
I'd never directed Three Camera before.
Sure.
But anyways, they said, okay, well, come over and do one for us.
And again, just for our listeners, three camera simply means you're getting three angles at once.
Right.
Of things that are being performed live in front of an audience.
Right. So I went over there, a couple of weeks before my start, and I watched one of the other directors work, and I got the feel for it. So I went over there, and I directed my first three-camera show, and I found it really it's easier than a single-camera show, basically, because all you have to do is not let the cameras bump into each other.
Particularly if you have operators who know what they're getting, what you need.
Yeah, they've done the show before. The basic sequence is the camera in the middle gets the master, and the two side cameras are covering. Anyway, I was happy doing this, and I got a lot of Love American Styles to do. They really liked me. I was doing more and more of them. And one day I got this.
That was Jim. That was Jim Parker, Arnold Margolin, wasn't it?
Yes, those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a great script. It was a comedy Godfather. And I saw this script and I read it, and I said, you know something? And in the meantime, I've been doing this for 5 years now. I wanted to do drama, and it's the same story. The door was closed. They said, no, you're a comedy director. You have no drama footage. And my agent said the same thing. Well, what am I going to do, show them Hogan's Heroes? And I said, well, I don't know. Anyway, the light bulb went on when I got this script, this comedy Godfather. And I said to the DP, I said, you know something, I want to shoot this differently. I want to shoot it with low-key lighting and split focus and camera moves, and let's not shoot it like we do the normal Love American style. And he said, well, what about the producers? They may not like it. And I had, being cocky and had done so many Love American stuff,
Right.
I said, well, I don't care.
So
What if they don't like
Jerry,
it?
Jerry, at this point, how old were you?
At this point, I was early 30s.
Okay.
Early 30s. So anyways, we shot it. And I worked it out that exactly to shoot it like a drama. And when the first day's dailies came in, and I said to the producers, how are the dailies? Oh, fine. Because what they cared about was the written word. And all the words were there, and the comedy played when it was supposed to. And they didn't really see what I was doing.
They didn't know much about the style.
Well, they didn't, the show, they looked at the actors, and they looked at the acting, and they heard their script. That's what they concentrated on.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I finished the show, put it together, and it was different. There's no doubt about it. About 6 weeks later, I get a letter in the mail from ABC. And I said, geez, I never get letters from the network. What the heck's that? I opened it up and said, Dear Jerry London, my name's Tony Barr, and I'm the executive of Primetime Series for ABC, and I want to talk to you about the episode you did of Love American Style. But it had a very ominous tone to it. So I figured, geez, they hated it, and that's
you're in trouble now.
I'm going to be out of one of the three networks because at that time that's what there were. There was three places to work, CBS,
Right.
ABC.
Right, and everybody had to be approved all the way up to the executive chain.
Right, and I said, big smart ass. I just wiped myself out. So I go over to his office in Century City, and the big office, and go up to the, hey, Jerry, come on in, sit down. He says, how come I don't know you? And he says, you've done a lot of comedy. Oh, I see you got Hogan and stuff. And I said, yeah. And I'm waiting for the shoe to drop. And he says, well, I got to tell you, we've done about 100 episodes of Love, and this was the most interesting one. You really know how to shoot. I almost fell off my chair.
That's a nice thing to hear, yeah.
Yeah, somebody recognized it. He says, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, gee, thank you. I want to direct drama. He says, why aren't you? I said, because I don't really have any footage to show. He said, oh, silly. He gets on the phone right while I'm in the office, and he's talking to somebody. He said, you heard Jerry London? Yeah, that's him, yeah. Well, we'd like you to talk to him. Will you? Okay, I'll tell him. Gets off the phone, and he said, all right, I want you to call Dave O'Connell over at Universal. He's the producer of Marcus Welby. I said, oh, great. So anyway, make a long story short, I call him up. I go over to Universal. I talked to him, and 6 weeks later, I was directing my first drama, Marcus Welby. That led to 2 years' work at Universal, where I directed 36 hours, because Universal keeps a book. The production managers keep a book of how long it takes a director to shoot a show, and they keep track of your hours. And I was very efficient. And
well, because you had the cutting background, you knew
right.
you knew what
Yeah.
you didn't need to shoot and
Yeah.
what was essential.
So I'd do a couple of Kojaks, and then I'd go over and do Rockford File, and then they'd move me over and I'd do $6 Million Man, and all those shows that Universal had.
So they kept you busy. In those days they had a lot of contract players, but were you a contract director?
I don't think they had any, but I didn't have to worry because I was booked solid.
Right.
That was it. And I loved it because I was meeting all these great actors and doing some great stuff.
So
In fact,
that was back when both Suzanne and I started at Universal. So you were doing things like Beretta, Switch, Kojak, 6 Mil.
Right.
Harry was Harry O at Universal.
Harry was always at Warner Brothers.
But then you got into Bionic Woman and
all that stuff.
I remember when I started out at Universal as a production secretary, and I remember it was a busy time. It was the heyday.
Yeah, a lot was loaded. It was great.
it was fun. It was fun because everybody was ultra busy. But when you say they kept a log of your hours, who cared about the quality of what you were shooting?
You know something? I think coming from the top, I think the financial end of their shows was more important than the quality. In other words, if you could shoot fast, that gave you a star. And then after that, they'd go to the producer and say, how was the show? And if they said, fine, then you got your other star.
Right.
But if you were good and you ran over budget, you were out.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
Yeah.
That's how they worked it.
It was
Sid Sheinberg and the boys, they were tough.
It was a real definition of show business, not show art. Right.
That's exactly.
Right.
And well, of course, and all these shows were shot in 6 days then. And so you had to know what you were doing. You had to shoot fast.
And my recollection is, because I started there as a location manager, they wanted to shoot as much practical as possible.
Yeah.
Like,
they didn't want to build a lot of stuff.
They didn't want to build and shoot on sound stages and take up space on the lot. They wanted to go out and destroy the community, basically.
Yeah, well, sure. I'll never forget, I was lucky enough, I got a 2-hour Kojak that they shot in New York. My cast was F. Murray Abraham, the Academy Award winner, Jerry Orbach, and Eli Wallach. How's that for a cast?
For a TV show.
TV, 2-hour show, great script.
How was Telly Savalas to work with?
Telly was the greatest. He had a photographic memory, and he never rehearsed. Never. You'd block the scene with a stand-in, put the marks down. He'd come on the set, and the assistant would slap the scene into his hand, because I'm not sure he ever read the script either. But he'd look at the 4 or 5 pages, and he'd walk on the marks, and then in 5 minutes he'd say, "Okay, Jerry, I'm ready."
And how would you compare that technique to others? I mean, how was Robert Blake to work with?
Well, Robert Blake was impossible. That's all. Of course, when you work with Blake, you'd get a script, and then the first day of shooting, you couldn't shoot because he rewrote the whole scenes.
Oh, lovely!
You'd have to wait 3 hours before you got the scene.
The production guys must have loved him.
So I guess those psychological classes kind of helped you out.
Luckily, I never panicked. I was very cool. Early on in the business, I knew that if I let this business stress me out, I couldn't be in it. So I never get mad, or you have to be a cool personality to be a director.
But I can imagine the pressure in those days at Universal when you know that the tower, the executives, are counting the minutes between takes, and then you've got a guy like Blake rewriting scenes.
Well, but I wasn't the first that he did that for, so everybody knew it. In fact, they got so far behind on the schedule. I was supposed to do 2 in a row, and they got so far behind they never did my second show because the timeline on my contract was over. So they just paid me off, and I never directed. It's the only time I ever got paid off on a show and didn't have to direct it. But when they give you the dates on a contract, they can't go beyond 2 or 3 days on each end.
Now was Rockford Files also at Universal?
Yeah, and Jimmy was fantastic. Of course, Steve Cannell, he wrote most of the scripts. They were really good, and Jimmy is a real fine guy and a great actor. He could give you a reading on a scene and then say, "Should I do it again?" And say, "You want to try it again?" Yeah. He could do 4 or 5 different readings, and everyone worked. He was magic that way.
So he was kind of what we see on screen, the likable, accessible guy.
Perfect, just like that.
Yeah, because he seems so relatable when you're watching him as an audience member.
During that time, they just started doing movies of the week, and Universal did a science fiction movie of the week that I got called Killdozer, which has got a kooky name, but it's a classic science fiction story about a meteor that comes down and hits a bulldozer and it becomes possessed on an island with
sounds very
workers.
Stephen King. Yeah.
And that was fun. But that was like the 3rd or 4th movie of the week they ever did. So that's kind of how I got into the long form of it. And then I got another miniseries over there called Women in White, and then a big one called Wheels with Rock Hudson and Lee Remick. It was 10 hours long. They were getting up into the long form.
That's a real miniseries, yeah.
Yeah, that's a real miniseries.
So what was your experience with Rock?
Rock was great. A real gentleman.
So it was kind of he had a long career in features at that point. So my recollection is that stepping down from features to TV was a big decision for an actor to make.
In those days.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
We really didn't talk about it. I mean, because the miniseries had that feature panache,
Mm-hmm.
I had some great actors in it, Ralph Bellamy, and of course Lee Remick was amazing. Lee Remick was one of those actors that was perfect on every take, and it was hard to tell her anything. And finally, after shooting so many days or weeks, I go over to her. I say, Lee, I just want you to know, I don't say much to you because I love everything you do. I just want you to know I'm watching, but I can't give you any direction. She said, I understand. And, of course, she won the Emmy for her performance in that. But Rock was a real gentleman, always there on time, and it was fun. I had Tony Franciosa, on the other hand, was kind of a problem.
Right. Yeah, he's a legend, right?
Yeah, and he was really something. I have a funny story with him. He was had some substance abuse problem. So I got through the show with him, and he worked for, I forgot how many, 8 weeks on this thing. And this thing went on forever, 10 hours. I forgot. I shot for 3 months, I think. On his last day, I had, I think, about 10 pages to shoot with he and Rock in an office. And we started in the morning, and it kind of went all right. And then he started to move a little faster. And we went to lunch. And when we came back, Tony was a little agitated, to say the least. So I'd rehearsed the scene. He said, Jerry, I don't know. You're shooting so many pages today. And he was like really up high. He was high. And he said, I can't do this. And he was going nuts, and he was walking back and forth. I don't think I can do this anymore. So I walked over to him, and I said, Tony, why don't you just walk off the stage and take a walk? Take it easy. There's no pressure here. We're not in any hurry. Relax. Take it easy. And the crew all looked at me like I was crazy, because they wanted to punch him out.
Right.
And I said, just be cool. Just take it easy. And I went back to my chair, and Tony's mouth kind of dropped open. He says, well, I kind of cooled him off. I went over to my chair, and I didn't turn around, but I grabbed my chair, I threw it on the ground, and I stepped on it, and I broke it into a million pieces.
Well, you had to let it out, right?
I had to let it out. Everybody on the set broke up, and even Tony broke up.
Oh, that's
it was
funny.
one of the funniest things I did in spontaneity. I just had to beat that chair up.
So you basically acted out for him, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Funny moment.
That's great. That's great. So tell me how you transition from all this episodic work where you're so busy, you're basically overbooked. When things got bumped, they were paying you off, and you just moved on to the next episode. So what was the transition from the movies of the week, Killdozer, things like that, to something as big as what Shogun became? Well,
Wheels was one of the big helpers. It was done for NBC. Shogun was an NBC show. When they decided to do Shogun, one of the things, my wife had read the book. I had never read it. She said, I just read this great book. Man, it's great. They'll never make it into a film. It's too complicated. And I said, well, yeah, great, okay. Then I hear they're doing it.
Did they have Eric Berkovici lined up at that point?
Eric Berkovici was going to write the script. But they came to me basically because of two things. I had worked at Paramount, and Shogun was a Paramount production, and because I had done three other miniseries, including a 10-hour one. So with that kind of experience, and Paramount knew me, I got the approval.
So they had confidence that you could handle a huge production schedule.
Right. So NBC approved me, Paramount approved me. The only one that had approved me was James Covell, the writer of Shogun. So I met with Covell, had a long chat with him, and he's a real gentleman, and I got it. That's what I heard. I got it. And they said, well, you go meet the writer, Eric Berkovici, who I'd never met before. Heard his name, done a lot of stuff.
Uh-huh.
I'll never forget, I went over to his house in Beverly Hills, and, how do you do it? Blah, blah, blah. He said, Jerry, why do you want to do this? He says, you must be crazy. He says, this show will kill you. It's really impossible to do this. He said, have you ever worked with the Japanese before? And I said, Eric, I think it's going to be a fantastic project. And my wife said it's impossible. I got to prove it's possible. So Eric and I really became brothers on the show. It was how close we were. Anyway, they sent me to Japan for a location scout, and we didn't have the script yet. We had a breakdown of the book, and that's how we looked for locations.
So they hired you without a script.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's all based on the book, and they knew it was going to be 12 hours. That's how they broke it down to 12 hours.
Okay, I have a very important wife question. Did your wife get to go with you?
She came a couple of times because my kids were young. Brought my kids over in the summer. while we were in Japan looking for locations, the first 2 hours came in, and they were great. And we started doing some preliminary casting, and everything was going great, except the fact that when we got the final, I got back to L.A., and by that time, all the scripts were in, and we had it boarded. Instead of $12 million that they were getting from NBC, which was $1 million an hour, it ran to $18 million. So they didn't know what they were going to do, whether they were going to shut down or whatever. And at that point, Clavell stepped in, and he went to Japan, and he pre-sold Asahi Television the rights to it, and he picked up another $4 or $5 million. And,
this is the author of the book doing this?
Yeah, but he had all these contacts in Asia.
That's still extraordinary.
Yeah, but the guy knew everybody.
Yeah.
He knew all these Hong Kong entrepreneurs, and he knew everybody because, he lived over there, and that's how he got his history to do the book.
I guess proving once again that in this business, it really does matter who you know.
Yeah.
Now, Jerry, I read that Shogun to date is the only USA-based TV miniseries that was filmed entirely in Japan.
Probably true. And also the only long miniseries directed by one director. All the other ones, Roots and everything else, had 2 or 3 directors.
That's quite an accomplishment. I remember at the time the show brought huge increasing awareness of the Japanese in Japan and the States.
Well, it did actually. It ruined the restaurant business and the movie business in the United States because everybody stayed home to watch it. And then afterwards, there was a lot of Japanese restaurants that opened,
right,
and a lot of new Japanese wives, because a lot of Americans went over there and fell in love with the, quote, Americo over there and brought them back.
I think that's exactly when sushi kind of hit West L.A., when Shogun was a big hit.
It's a big time, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about Richard Chamberlain. How was he to work with?
Chamberlain was the best. Again, a real Jimmy Garner type person. Knew his lines. Never a problem.
I mean, he was no small potatoes. He had been Dr. Kildare.
Yeah, and he also did some stage work.
Uh-huh.
But, he was great. He's always helpful, great for the part. In fact, I had one scene in the prison when he was a prisoner that was about a 12-page scene, and they had scheduled 3 days to shoot it. I had a wonderful English actor in there by the name of Michael Hordern, who played the priest. And in this prison, we shot. It was a great set. They did a beautiful job in it. And these 2 actors were so good. I did 12 pages in a day, and picked up 2 days. And that's how good Chamberlain was too. I mean, they take one was great. How can you go for another take when they're perfect?
So what you're saying is he was the James you preferred over James Franciscus.
Anthony Franciscus.
I wonder how far over budget you would have gone if Franciscus had that role.
Never.
You wouldn't have finished, right?
No. Again, you get lucky.
How long was that Shogun shoot?
6.5 months. I was in Japan almost a year with the prep. It was great because I was physically so strong. I never let myself get sick, and I was there every day. Saturdays I'd go in the cutting room.
Was Eric Berkovici, the writer, was he with you at all times?
Well, I brought him over as the producer. When I prepped it, I knew that I had to have someone as an ally there. Uh-huh. And I talked to the executive production guys, and I said, "You got to bring Eric over. He's got to produce this thing." And
yeah, I can't imagine something that complex without the guy most intimate with the material being around.
Right.
Because it's hard to keep all the balls up in the air as a director.
Oh yeah, well there was so much to do, and he was my. There was a lot of infighting with the Japanese as far as a culture clashing. I mean, that's a whole other story, the culture clash. Mm-hmm. And Eric did all the infighting while I was shooting. It was amazing what went on. It really was.
Was there at any point during your shoot that you just became overwhelmed and you thought you just couldn't do this?
Right when I was about finished with the first 2 hours, I don't know. It was so tough getting everything because, when we worked through interpreters, in fact, the first week I was a day behind, and Paramount called and said, Jerry, if you're one day behind on the first week, after 26 weeks, you're going to be, I said, guys, let me work this out, you know. And I started to analyze, why am I behind? And it wasn't from talking so much. I'd go on the set and I'd say, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. We're moving here, and the actors are doing this. And then all these Japanese that didn't really understand English, my interpreter would go over to them, and they'd talk about it, and then they'd come back to her. It was a lady interpreter. She was very good. And she would come back to me, and she said, they want to know if you want to move here, here, and here. I said, yes, and then she'd go back to them. There was like 6 steps before anything moved. So I came in after the first week, and I said, Wei, her name was Wei, I said, I'm going to talk to the crew directly. And they said, well, they won't understand. And I said, well, I'll speak loud. So I got out there, and I said, doing this and doing that and everything. And they said, did he say that? And she said, well, you heard him in Japanese. And I knocked out 2 steps. So the second week, I'm back on schedule. And I'm having lunch with her, and I'm saying, you know, I feel pretty good. I can shoot in any country, and I can really make this work. What are you talking about? I said, well, I got back on schedule because I knew I should talk to the crew. She said, that had nothing to do with it. I said, what are you talking about? She said, they just didn't want to take orders from a woman.
Oh, my goodness.
That's perfect.
Culture clash. And
yeah,
nobody,
big time.
Yes.
Nobody ever said that to me.
Big time. So Shogun becomes this huge success.
Right.
The name of Jerry London is now inscribed in the annals of television movie history.
Right.
And you come back to the States, and you go to work for Aaron Spelling.
Well, it wasn't right away, but because I've done 11 miniseries, you know, I've shot a couple in Italy and so forth. But down the road, you know, my agent, who was Aaron Spelling's agent, put us together, and we started doing pilots. And
then you got the assignment to do the never-to-be-forgotten Dark Mansions.
Yes, with Mr. McCullough.
Right. We worked on that together, and I thought the cast was terrific. I thought Joan Fontaine and Linda Pearl and Paul Shinar, all those guys, Michael York. In my perspective, they were terrific.
But I got to tell you one Aaron Spelling story. When we got the script, I had worked with Liam Neeson twice before in England, and I said to Aaron, you know, the lead guy in here I got the guy for you. He's perfect. He's Irish, but he's a great actor. His name is Liam Neeson. He said, well, let me see some film. So I got some scenes from the 2 miniseries I do with him. Aaron looked at it, and he said, nah, I don't think he's right for it. He passed on Liam Neeson.
Yeah. Well, it just shows. I mean, on the other hand, I mean, casting is kind of a guessing game. You really don't know anything until people kind of evolve and explode.
Also, I think Liam Neeson, you know, Aaron Spelling was known to cast real, in those times, leading-looking kind of men.
Yeah.
And Liam Neeson is not your typical leading actor.
Yeah, he's a rough-looking guy. Yeah.
Right, a little offbeat.
Yes, and now he's huge. They call him the John Wayne of his generation.
Yeah,
but
great charisma.
Yeah, Aaron would have cast Rob Lowe in a minute.
Yeah. In fact, when I did If Tomorrow Comes over in England, I said to my casting agent, I said, I don't care what part Liam Neeson is doing. I want him in it. That's how I really knew that this guy was going to explode.
Well, you had a good eye.
Well, you've certainly been proven right over the last couple of years. My gosh.
Yeah.
So you pretty much worked in Europe and Asia, Australia, Canada.
Right.
You must have loved traveling.
It became part of my life, actually. You know,
sure.
I shot in Italy 5 times.
Oh, that must have been great.
Hong Kong and in Thailand and all these exotic locations.
So without going over your 100+ credits, probably closer to 300 when you look at each episode.
Yeah.
What was and this is kind of a pop quiz, what was your very best shoot? What do you look back on and say, man, I wish every day was like that?
I got to tell you, I think The Scarlet and the Black with Gregory Peck and John Gielgud and Christopher Plummer was it.
Boy, you just named 3 of the best actors of all time.
Great actors. The whole thing was shot in Rome. I got to shoot in the gardens of the Vatican.
Wow.
The script was fantastic. True story about a Monsignor who helped get refugees out of Italy. And it turned out great. And I had Ennio Morricone as the composer.
Wow.
How can you fail?
Yeah.
Really. It's a wonderful show. It's one of my all-time favorites. Real classy.
Was it hard getting permission from the Vatican to shoot in their gardens?
Well, that's a great story. I had 3 days. I shot in St. Peter's Square and in the garden. Had 3 days. I had, I think, 65 different cuts of different scenes. And we had 3 days to do it. 3 days ahead of the shoot, they came down and said, well, we've got some security problems. We'll give you 1 day.
Whoa.
This was right before we was going to start. So they said, what are you going to do? And I said, I've got to get the scope. I said, all right, well, I want 3 cameras. I want 3 ADs and a big staff, and we'll leapfrog it, and I'll shoot 3 days in one. And I told Gregory Peck, I said, you're going to be doing 25 wardrobe changes that day. Will you do it for me? And he said, I will do it. And what we did is we leapfrogged. As we shot in location 1, I'd get on the walkie-talkie with my second AD, and I'd say, okay, we'll be there in 10. Put the camera here, and of course we had already worked it all out on paper, and we leapfrogged. And I'll tell you, I got the day's work done, and I was never so tired in my whole life when I finished that day. I'll never remember. I went to my hotel room and hit the bathtub for about an hour.
I'll bet.
It was a killer.
That's one of the things that I don't think most people realize is the physical demand of being a director. You're on your feet, 14 hours a day. You're answering 300 questions an hour.
You're a psychiatrist.
And just discuss the stamina aspect of that. Tell me how you manage to handle that, because, I mean, I don't care if you're 20 years old or 30 years old. It's tough.
Well, you got to love it, that's all. If you don't love it, you can't do it. I mean, you got to really believe in it. That's why when you accept to do a script, you better know that it's good because, you're committing a part of your life to it, so you've got to love it. Once you commit, that's it. You're committed, and you just make it happen.
So you have to be resilient. In being resilient, you have some tough days. Tell me about the very worst day you've had on any set.
Well, that was the day. That day I just told you about was the worst day, trying to get 60 setups in Italy.
But you got it.
That was the toughest day. The other one that was a real problem was on Shogun when I was doing the ship battle, when Chamberlain was on the lead ship, the row where all the galley slaves were rowing, and there was a bunch of samurais and all these little boats with the arrows they were gonna fight each other. And it was at night, and to light water at night's really tough, so we had to be close to a breakwater. And we were just doing this one scene that night. I had 3 cameras out in boats and all the other little boats and the galley boat. And we prepped it and went to dinner. And when we came back from dinner, we were about ready to shoot. And the Japanese assistant director said, I have a problem, Mr. London. When I line up all the samurai boats, they don't stay together, so your shot won't be in line with the galley slave ship. They'll be moving around. And he said, what should we do? I said, well, anchor the little slave ships, and when we roll, take the anchors off, and then I'll have them row towards each other, and I'll give Chamberlain the cue now. When I yell out now, that's when he fires, and then they fire, and we blow everything up. So they came back to me and said, we have no anchors. That was the answer.
No,
no answer. The director has to come up with it. In the meantime, Berkovich is saying, you're never going to get this. Forget it. He says, here. And he had a scotch bottle attached to his belt. And we all had a drink at night because it was cold,
Oh, yeah.
And so anyways, I'm thinking, and the clock's ticking, and nothing's going on. I said, I'll tell you what. I looked at the tide, and it's going right to left. Put the little fishing boats out about 20, 30 yards out, and let them flow, and I'll keep the camera running. When finally the tide brings them in, and they're lined up, I'll give Chamberlain the cue. And Eric says, you're crazy, forget it. And so anyways, that's what we did. We put it out there. Now it's about 1:30 in the morning. We finally are ready to go, and they wake up the camera crew, and they wake up Chamberlain, they wake up everybody. Say, we're ready to go. I said, okay, you got your cue? Yeah, all right. Roll the camera. They roll the cameras, and everybody starts rowing. The little samurai boats are rowing, and Chamberlain and the galley slave ships rowing, and they're coming to each other, and I'm watching, and sure enough, the tide's bringing it in. And I'm looking at Eric, and he's sipping on the scotch, and he says, you're never going to get this. And I said, you watch. Anyways, a minute goes by, 2 minutes go by, and I'm watching, and they're just about lined up, and Chamberlain yells out, hey, Jerry, when do I yell now?
Oh, God.
And, of course, the Japanese heard the words now. Bang, bang, bang. Blew up everything, and the camera never got it.
Oh.
And as Chamberlain came by the camera right in front of me, he said, hey, Jerry, I effed up, didn't I? And I'm looking at Eric, and he's not there. He's laying on the deck of the thing with his hands on his side, laughing like crazy. He said, I told you were going to get this here. Have another drink.
Oh, man, the language thing must have been tough.
Oh, yeah. That was the big mistake. But when you look back at it, it's kind of funny.
Now, you've worked with so many actors, and I have a little list here. I just want to get a quick take on your working experience with them. Clint Eastwood.
Clint, I did a commercial with. He was terrific.
Was he?
Very.
How about Dick Van Dyke?
Liked Dick Van Dyke a lot. He was fun. An improviser and cool guy.
Dolly Parton?
Wonderful. First time you meet her, she gives you a big hug, and you love it.
Yeah, I hear she's bigger than life.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun.
How about Richard Burton?
He was wonderful, except he had his brain was pickled.
Sure.
He couldn't remember anything. He died 6 weeks after I finished shooting Ellis Island.
Oh,
He had a
really?
stroke. Yeah, he had a stroke. But a wonderful guy, and while they were lighting, all he talked about was Liz Taylor.
Oh,
and
still.
He was married to another lady.
Wow. They were the couple for sure. And
Yep.
how about Whoopi Goldberg?
Whoopi's a lot of fun. The most profane woman I ever worked with. And
Really?
Funny. Oh, yeah. And she knows how to cuss. But she's funny. She is funny.
Yeah. Well, she's made a great comeback
Yeah.
in her
really.
own way, you know. And how about Charleston Heston?
Wonderful gentleman. A real gentleman. Nice man. Just great.
Well, you've worked with so many. So is this a fair question to ask you? Who's your favorite actor and actress that you worked with, or there was just?
Well, it's kind of tough. That my two people that I just would like to really be friendly with and always were very pleasant were Jimmy Garner and Angie Dickenson. Those are my two real favorite people.
Were they in a picture together?
No. Jimmy was Rockford Files, and Angie was Policewoman.
Seems like if we were going to do some casting, they'd be terrific in the same picture.
Yeah. Right.
So give me an idea as we kind of turn the corner here and begin to wrap this up. What was your biggest surprise you've ever had in the business?
Well, I'll tell you, I had Sid Caesar in a episode of Love American Style. And God, he was an icon. It was a 2-day show. And I put in 12 camera moves, and I did the master at the same time. It was a master that had coverage in it. And 15 moves, I did a couple takes on it. And by 2 o'clock, I had 7 pages in the can.
Well, you're almost done for the day.
And then all I had to do was do a reverse, and I finished the day's work. That was the biggest surprise and the biggest challenge, and I won.
And you did it.
And throughout your career, all the success you've had, what's your biggest disappointment?
Actually, the biggest disappointment is that the older you get, the less work you get. That's the biggest disappointment because of the fact that all the producers are younger, and they use their contemporaries. They're younger people, so that it's hard to keep going. I feel I'm a better director now because every time I shoot something, I learn something.
Well, of course. Plus, you've seen it all. You know how to encounter and overcome problems.
Yeah.
Whereas
that's the biggest disappointment. They kind of they don't want you after you're a certain age.
How do you feel about the whole digital revolution in terms of shooting and editing?
I think it's great. Especially the editing version. You can do 5 different versions in 20 minutes. Check it out this way, that way. It's great. Yeah.
So, real quickly, give me a quick couple of plugs on your 2 darling children.
Well, my daughter is a casting director. She's been one for 15 years, and she does pilots and movies, Lisa London. My son, Todd London, is an executive over at Walt Disney Productions. He's the vice president of post-production of all the movies at Disney. I'm real proud of him.
Wow, it's a real showbiz family.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the word nepotism, but it becomes the family business, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. So, what are you up to these days? You have some projects going?
Well, I've developed a script that I'm really proud of. I'm trying to get financing for. It's the true story of Marcel Marceau, the mime, who was, when he was 16 years old, he was a resistance fighter in France and helped get the Jewish children out of France into Switzerland. And I have a wonderful script. It's called The Art of Silence, and I'm trying to get financing now. I've got a great script, so hopefully I'll be able to pull it off.
That sounds wonderful. Well, Jerry, I cannot tell you how terrific this has been talking to you. You and I have been friends for quite a while, and I've never heard most of these stories.
Yeah, well, when we do version 2, I'll give you the rest of them.
Great stories. Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
All right, man.
I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Okay, man. I'll talk soon.
Thank you, Jerry.
Talk to you soon.
All righty.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, are you looking for something? Hate driving down to the mall to see if they even have it in stock. Amazon.com has whatever you need. School supplies, clothing, shoes, toys, video games, DVDs of the shows we've worked on. I could go on forever, but you get the idea. Go to our website at morehollywoodhides.com and you'll be supporting the podcast, so give it a shot. Amazon services from selections to deliveries to returns. It's really beyond belief.
Today's music is provided by Chance McCarthy.